take care of a couple of announcements this evening, and then we'll go on with the rest of our service. Of course, our kids club's going on, so help us promote those. And then tonight, Tim Melton is here, and from Japan. I'll say a little bit more about him in a little bit, but he's here to give us an update. And then we have church volleyball tomorrow night, and those of you who come will understand this. They're organizing new teams, and so they'll do that tomorrow night at volleyball, and then there will be a sign-up sheet on Sunday as well. And so if you're wanting to be involved in that, see Pastor C or one of the folks that are there, and they can give you some direction on that. Then there's some academy games Friday. They play in Fredericksburg, and they actually play Faith and Landmark, I think. I think there are a couple of games down there, so the kids will know some details about that. Sunday, we have a combined Sunday school. David Stevens, a missionary deputy to Tunisia, will be with us, and so he'll speak for the Sunday school hour, and then just take a few minutes in the morning service, and he'll speak in the evening as well. And then Monday, another volleyball game for the Academy girls down in Edinburgh. And that's got an extra G in there, Edinburgh. So, and then next Wednesday, Rachel Langendorfer will be here, and we support her already. The ones that we support, like David Stevens that's coming Sunday, he's probably been scheduled for a year, but when we have folks that are home on furlough, a lot of times we have to work them in, so like tonight and then next week, so it's good to have some of the folks that we support here, but that's why we have a couple of them here in a row, and so we always enjoy hearing from those folks. And then two other things, or one other thing that's on here, the 23rd, not next week as it was originally on the schedule, but the following week, the parents, the teen parents, will meet with Royalty Club on that night. Yes, ma'am? The 23rd? 25th? Okay, I was just checking to see if anybody was paying attention, and you get a gold star. All right. 25th? It is the 25th. The 18th will be the week before, and then the 25th. All right, good catch. All right. Yeah, so it'll be the 25th, not next Wednesday, whatever that would be. And then one other thing that I didn't get to put on here, Sunday night this week, we're having a fellowship after the evening service. We will have some missionaries here, so it's always a good opportunity to get to know the missionaries, but we're doing one other thing. Lois Perkinson is actually moving to Texas. I think I was on the back end of finding that out. I didn't know that until like last week. And so she's going to be moving toward the end of the month, middle end of the month. And so Sunday night, we want to have a little get-together for her. We'll have some cake. And then we'd like you to bring some just appetizer type or snack type foods as well, maybe sandwiches or something like that, and we'll do that for Lois. And so that'll give me an excuse to go visit somebody in Texas then. So
everyone is welcome. If you want to come, rodeo season is the end of February, beginning of March.
And that'd be a great time to go to Texas. Yes, yeah, that would be a good time to go to Senior Saints trip to Texas for the rodeo. All right. Yeah, so that'll be Sunday night, and we'll mention that again Sunday morning to do that. All right, and I think that's all the announcements I have. Anything else that I'm missing going on? So, all right, so we're going to switch, and as I mentioned, Tim Melton is here. He came in this afternoon. We've had an opportunity to spend a little time together this evening, and I have really enjoyed getting a little update on his ministry. They're in Nagoya, Japan. It's very high on my list to go visit, and I have tried a couple of times to work that out, Japan, Korea, China, and just haven't gotten there yet. And so next summer, I'll leave in June. I'll be back in September for that trip. But I would love to go see their ministry because the Lord is doing some good things there. And Tim will tell you more about their ministry, and I want our folks to really understand what's going on there. But one of the things that really appealed to us when Tim was going to the field was he grew up there. And so he understands the culture, speaks the language fluently, and so that gives him a real edge as far as ministry in Japan. And so I always enjoy seeing him and hearing about the ministry, and we've had a good friendship. And so tonight he's going to take the service and give us a little more information about that, and perhaps he'll give a little time for question and answer even, just to find out about his ministry. And I want you to really know that, because when we pray for them, we want to pray intelligently. And so I look forward to hearing from him. All right, Tim?
皆さん、こんばんは。名古屋から来ました、アルトと申します。よろしくお願いします。今の方ってますか No. I just said my name is Tim Milton. I'm from Nagoya, Japan, and then I gave a greeting in Japanese, which is not translatable in English. It just means let's have a good relationship kind of thing. But what do I got up there? Okay. That's my wife. She's not able to be with me, but we're Tim and Kim Melton. We're from Nagoya, or Nagoya, Americans pronounce it, Japan. It's the third largest metropolitan area in Japan. And my wife isn't able to travel with me much. She has some back issues. In fact, she is supposed to go to the doctor she went last week. She's supposed to go again, so please pray for her back. She travels with me as much as she can. But so a little bit about Japan. Our country is Japan. In Japanese, Japan is called Nippon, or Nihon, or the other. And it is written like this. And that is a Chinese kanji characters that China gave Japan. And it means sun. The first kanji is sun, and the second kanji is origin or source. And Japan is east of China, so when the Chinese look toward Japan, they see the sun rising. And so that's why they called it the sun source. Japan is the land where the sun is the source. And of course in English we call it the land of the rising sun. And that's why. Has that ever made sense to you? You know, Japan is not the rising sun to us. To us it's the land of the sinking sun, you know, because it's west of us. But so from the Chinese perspective, it's the land of the rising sun. So that's why they have that name. The Japanese flag is today is just a red ball, which signifies the sun. That's the sun. In the old flag, the imperial flag, is with the sunbeams coming out too. So that's what Japan's flag is. Some people, we missionaries like to say that's a ball of red tape because the Japanese are very particular in their forms and applications and things. It has a very small, but has a big population, a large population. Japan is 27 times smaller than the U.S. land-wise, but it has a third of the population. To fill up the mass of the country of the United States, you need 27 Japans. But all of the population of the United States in the country would only take 3 Japans. So it's very, very crowded. It's like cramming all of America into 3 of Japan. And on top of that, Japan is 70% mountains. And so you're really talking about 125 million people. Amounts to about 30% of California is what it boils down to. So it's a very, very crowded place. The population, a quarter of the population live in the Tokyo metropolitan area, which is 35 million people. Very populated country. Japan is a very difficult place to evangelize. Statistics range from 2% to the maximum I've ever seen to 7% rate of Christians. And that includes Catholics and Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and everybody else. But so very, very few true Christians. The difficulty of the Japanese culture is which is different and difficult for most Americans to learn. The religion, of course, is different. And of course, they don't need foreign gods, is their idea. So let's look at those one at a time. Their culture is different. They do things differently. Japan has an ancient and traditional culture. Of course, they've modernized a lot of things, but some of the things they do, they've done for hundreds of years the same way. And so they're a very traditional country. They don't wear shoes in their houses. They have a little genkan, they call it, a little foyer area. They step up into the house, put on your house slippers, and then when you leave, you take off your slippers and you can go down and go out. So they don't wear their shoes in their houses. But when you go to the toilet, when you open the door, you will see another pair of slippers inside the toilet. And so what you're supposed to do is take off your house slippers, put on the toilet slippers, and then when you come out of the toilet, take off the toilet slippers and put on the house slippers. But you know what I'm going to say? How many times I've been walking around, somebody goes, "Oh, you got the toilet slippers on." You know, they usually say toilet right on them in English, so there's no excuse. But They don't have all Western toilets. They're getting more and more Western toilets, but this is a traditional Japanese toilet. So if you go to somebody's house and you ask to use the restroom, this is probably what you're going to find, and so it's very difficult. Some Americans, I asked some teens one time, how many have done this? Stand your chopsticks up in your rice, and some people raise their hand. I said, don't ever do that in Japan. That's a symbol of death. They do this at a funeral when they're offering the rice to the departed spirits. And so if they see a person standing their chopsticks up like they're in their rice, they go, never do that in Japan. So they do eat their food differently. Of course, when you're eating soup with chopsticks, it's going to be a little bit, I can't hear that, sorry. But that's how it sounds at a ramen shop in Japan. That's how you eat it, There's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, it's soupy, and second of all, when you suck in the air like that, it cools it off and it gives it it aerates it and gives it a good flavor. So most Americans can't do that. They try, but they can't. But it's how Japanese eat their food, slurp it in there. You don't tip in Japan. There's no tips for anything. No, not at a restaurant or anywhere else. No tips. They're very considerate people. And during allergy season or cold season, everybody wears these, surgical masks, dust mask type things, so they won't sneeze on people or cough on people. They're very considerate, but everybody wears those. When you point to yourself in Japan, you point to your nose, not, in America we say me, but they point to their nose saying me. Other gestures in Japan, Japanese are different. This is anger, when you're angry. This is how they count, sort of backwards to what we do. This means fighting, when, like if you see a couple fighting, they'll go, like they're fighting, and two swords clashing together kind of thing, So this is how you say no. This is how they say come here. We're usually like this, they're like this, underneath. So don't ever point it's very rude, considered rude to point at somebody with your finger. You point with your hand. Point at anything is really kind of rude. So. In Japan, you do a lot of bowing. When you're talking to somebody, if you see two Japanese talking, they're constantly going like this, bowing, bowing, bowing. But not only you bow a lot, you have to know how much to bow. So if it's just a colleague at your company or a friend or something like that, you bow 15 degrees. If it's a colleague from another company, a little more respect, you bow 30 degrees. And if it's your boss or somebody, your teacher or something like that, you're supposed to bow 45 degrees. So depending on what your social status is and what their social status is, so your boss will bow to you 15 degrees and you'll bow to him 45 degrees because of the social status. So it's a very complicated thing even in the bowing. Ladies put their hands in their laps when they bow. Men put their hands at their side when they bow. So different culture than our culture for sure. They don't litter in Japan. There's not a lot of trash receptacles in Japan, but the streets are not littered. People take home their own trash. They have community cleanup days. Everybody cleans out in front of their own house or business almost every day, and so it's a very clean place. The streets are clean. They're very cleanly minded. They learn to be conscious of cleanliness at school. They don't have janitors at school. The students do all the cleaning. So after school, after the class is over, they'll get out the brooms and the mops and the buckets and everything, and they clean the school every day. That's part of the school education. They clean the school, the bathroom, the toilets, everything, Can you see your teenager sticking their hand in the toilet? I can't see many Americans doing that, but they do that every day in Japan. So. Also, the language is a barrier. The Japanese language is a different language than any other language in the world. There's no, they don't really know where it came from because somebody says, what about Chinese? The Japanese borrowed the Chinese kanji characters because they didn't have a written language, but they put their own Japanese words on it. So the Japanese words are unique. They're not related to any other language in the world. So it's very difficult for most Westerners to learn, especially to pronounce the language right. They have 3 alphabets. There's the hiragana. Hiragana is a phonetic alphabet that is most words and words that pronunciation guide are written in hiragana. And then there's katakana. Katakana is all foreign words, foreign people's names and everything are written in katakana. So it's pronounced the same as hiragana, but it's written differently and it's used for different purposes. Sometimes they use it for emphasis too, but it's a different set of alphabets. And then there's the kanji characters. There's over 12,000 kanji characters, about 13,000 kanji characters. When you get out of high school, you're supposed to be able to read about 3,000 kanji characters. And you say, well, I can memorize 3,000 kanji characters. But the problem is, each kanji character has 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different pronunciations and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different meanings, you know. So it's a very complicated language to learn because it depends on where it comes in the sentence and all that sort of stuff. It depends on how you pronounce it. So it's very complicated. Even the Japanese don't like it, but what are they supposed to do now? They can't change it. At first, the kanji, for example, is Tokyo. That's how you write Tokyo, and that means Tokyo is the eastern capital, so it's east and capital. So it's logical. Hokkaido is north, sea, way. That's what the 3 kanjis mean. And then jidensha is a bicycle. Ji is self, and ten is to go around, to revolve, and then sha is a vehicle, like when a car or something like that. So it's very logical, but it's very complicated. You have to learn each one of those languages. If you turn the kanji characters around, they're not pronounced the opposite way. For example, Japan is Nippon, right? Well, if you turn that around, it's called Honjitsu, which is not how Nippon pronounced, okay? You pronounce it differently depending on what order it comes in the sentence and all that sort of stuff. This is a very complicated language. Not only is the pronunciation complicated, the grammar is different. In English, our grammar, our syntax is subject, verb, object. In Japanese, it's subject, object, verb. Verb is always last. So instead of saying I'm going to the store, you say to the store, I to the store go. Okay, the verb is always last. Or he plays the piano would be he the piano plays. So the verb is always last, and the tense ending is so you don't know if it's past tense or present tense until the very, very, very last. You got to listen to the whole sentence to get the meaning. So it's very, very different. The religion, again, is another hindrance to the reception of the gospel. They're very religious, practicing people. They don't know what they believe, and nobody would personally believe. They don't defend their belief, logically, but they practice their Buddhism and Shintoism both. Very religious people. There's idolatry everywhere in Japan. They practice idolatry, worship idols, and they also practice ancestor worship. There are different kinds of idols too. Many different kinds of idols. There's a guzo, which is the general word for idol, which is usually a statue shaped like a man, heads and arms and things like that. And then there's shinzo, which is shin is the word for God. So the statues of their gods. Most of them are looking angry and stuff. And then there's the Buddhas, butsuzo they call it in Japanese, and they worship these. They pray before them, offer flowers and things before them. And then there's the roadside gods called jizo. Jizo are for the protection of travelers. You'll see them along the paths of many places. Used to be Japan, the travel was by foot, and so there are footpaths even to this day, hundreds of year-old footpaths, and you can go hiking up in the mountains or whatever on those paths, but every path you go to there, you're going to find these idols all along the way. Some of them are very, very old, hundreds of years old, and they'll still put flowers in front of them, bow before them, worship, and ask for protection and things like that. So, and there's also kamidana. Kamidana is a god shelf. It's a Shinto god shelf, a Shinto shrine, and most companies in Japan have these Shinto shrines somewhere. It's up, and so if you go into a business, you look around, somewhere up there'll be near the ceiling will be a little god shelf. And most companies will once a year have the Shinto priest come in and do a ceremony, and everybody's required to go to the ceremony, and he'll ask, he'll be warding off demons and praying for the success of the company. Well, Christians, they can't participate in that, and so it's very difficult for Christians to have a good testimony because if they don't go to this ceremony, then they might be seen as being against the company. They don't want the success of the company. But if you do go, then your testimony. Some Japanese compromise. They go and they bow and they pray and they go like this, and they say, well, I'm praying to God. The problem is nobody else knows you're praying to the real God. They think you're praying to the idol too. So it's very difficult to be a consistent Christian in Japan. Then there's the butsudan. Butsudan is a god shelf they have in their house, and is passed down usually to the eldest son or the eldest daughter if there is no son. And it is in Japan, cremation is the law. So when somebody dies, they must be cremated, and they take some of the ashes and they put that in the butsudan. And a faithful Buddhist will open that up every morning and ding a bell, light an incense, stick it on there, and pray to the ancestors. And that's what a butsudan is for. And most homes have a butsudan that's been handed down. We had a man in our church who was a Christian, of course, and his father passed away, and he inherited the butsudan. But he said, I'm a Christian, I don't want this butsudan. But he couldn't throw it away, and so he said, can I bring it over to church, and can we use your skill saw and cut it all up? And then in Japan, if you can fit it in, you have to buy these trash bags, and if you can fit it in a trash bag, they'll take it away. So if you cut it up small enough, you can put anything in a trash bag. didn't want to pay about $30, $40 to throw away an old sofa I had one time, so I used my skills. I cut it up and put it in the bag, and they took it away for free. So I wouldn't do that again. That was a lot of work to save $30. But anyway, so we cut it up and threw it away. So it was good testimony to everybody that saw us there. The Japanese thinking is different. Most Oriental thinking is different than American. We have a logical base, truth based. We think something's important if it's true, and that we want it to be true. They're not concerned about truth as much as they are about feeling. So if somebody's ugly and you say you're ugly, then that'll hurt their feelings. So you say, oh, you're beautiful, even though you know it's a lie. It's polite and it's considerate for their feelings. So that's what even a lie is appropriate in Japan if it's your feel, how people feel is more important than the truth. And that when you comes over the gospel, that's another area which makes it hard to present the gospel, because it's difficult to say, you're a sinner and you're going to hell. That's rude, okay? Even if they are going to hell, you shouldn't tell them that, So that's, but the only way that they're going to give forgiveness is to know that they're a sinner. So anyway, prosperity is another reason that the Japanese have difficulty understanding and accepting the gospel. They're a very prosperous country. Japan has the third largest GPD, the gross national domestic product, in the world. They're a little bitty teeny island, the 27th of the United States. So America has the number one GPD in the world, 19 trillion. China's number 2 is 12 trillion, and then Japan's number 3. They're always in the G8 summit or whatever, because they're a big economic power, even though they're a small country. And so why should they, their gods have brought them success, financial success. Why should they mess that up and go to your gods? And so that's another thing that hinders the reception of the gospel. Of course, we're there to present the gospel and to tell them about the only true and living God. In Japan, they call themselves the land of 8 million gods. Now, it's not because there's 8 million gods. There's probably a lot more. They have gods for everything and everywhere. And but 8 million in Japanese, it's like saying there was a trillion of them. We exaggerate, saying there's a trillion or a billion or whatever. That's an exaggerated number, and so 8 million to them is an exaggerated number. It means there's many, many, many. So they call themselves, we are the land of 8 million gods, they call themselves. So there's gods everywhere, and they worship many different gods, but they're all false gods. They don't know the gods to whom they worship. And so we're there to tell them about the only true and living God. A little bit about my history, my family history. My parents are missionaries. They're still there. My dad will be 85 in December. Still there, full-time missionary. Passes out tracts almost every day. I talked to my brother today on the way up. We were Facebook messaging or something. I don't know whatever he was. I was talking. I wasn't touching the screen. I was talking. But anyway, so I said, "Hey, how's Dad and Mom doing?" And he said, "Oh, they're doing great." Because the last time I heard Dad, his voice sounded a little bit weak. He said, "Oh, he's doing great. Mom's going out, passing out tracts with him now." So it's like, okay, so they're doing good. But I grew up in Japan. I was there since I was 5 years old, and this is a picture of the 4 boys that were there when we got there. And this is the first church my dad had in his house while he was in language school. And then soon came a little girl, and then another little girl, and we grew up 6 kids in Japan, which is very, very unusual. Japanese have 2 or 3 at most, and so there were 6 of us. But we participated in the ministry. We would pass out tracts, and every time my dad we'd do tent meetings and things like that. The whole family I'd play the piano, my brother would lead singing and things like that. And we grew up as a family ministry in Japan, and probably that's the reason myself and my brother are missionaries over there. I'm the oldest, he's the second oldest. Phil and Debbie are in Seki City, and my dad and Mom are in Yamagata City, and I'm in Nagoya City. And we're about an hour and 15 minutes from Phil or my dad, and they're about 35 minutes apart. So that's the area that we minister in there. Our ministry, we have actually 2 churches. Our Japanese ministry is called Calvary Baptist Church, or Karubari Baptist Kyokai. And then our English ministry is called Nagoya International Baptist Church. And we started the English ministry because there's a lot of foreigners in our city. There's a lot of universities in our city. We have 4 universities right near our church. And so there's a lot of university people that come over from Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines. They're either coming over to work or to school there. And so we started the English ministry to reach those people. So every 4th Sunday of the month, we have a combined service. Usually our morning service is Japanese or an English service in the afternoon, and we combine them in the morning. We have a combined service, and I'll say one sentence in English, and I'll say it in Japanese and English, Japanese like that, and translate for myself. And then afterwards we have a potluck meal, and everybody loves to gather for fellowship and have potluck meal. Usually people bring stuff from their own country. We have we have a girl from Vietnam. We have a couple from India, and they bring the Indian dishes and things, and so people love to sit around and eat and talk together. A good time of fellowship. They're doing this every week, not the potluck part, but the combined service in our absence. The man that's replacing us is a volunteer missionary, and so he's replacing me. So he has only one service, but when we return, we'll see what they want to keep doing. But then our church also supports missionaries. We support 3 missionaries. We support a couple to Bangladesh. They've been missionaries to Bangladesh for 30 or 40 years. They're Japanese. They're going out of Japan. Local churches sending them over to Bangladesh. We have another missionary lady who's been sort of many years in Senegal, a single lady missionary, Mrs. Matsumoto. And then we just took on the Shibayama family right before we left. They're missionaries in Cambodia. And so we support them. So there are missionaries from Japan going out. Now, a lot of people don't think about that. The Great Commission doesn't just apply to Americans to go over to some. It applies to everybody, everywhere, all over the world. It's supposed to go all over to other places of the world. Soon we might need missionaries to America from the other parts. My wife does a ladies' Bible study. She does Tuesday, second and fourth Tuesday has an English ladies' Bible study. And then on Saturday, the first Saturday every month, we do a Japanese ladies' Bible study. And the lady standing up there in the pink sweater is our co-worker, Becca Coleman. She's our ladies' ministry and children's ministry worker, and she teaches the Japanese ladies' Bible study. We also have a children's ministry. Becca is our children's minister. We have a children's meeting about 3 or 4 times a year, and we'll go out and pass out announcements, and the kids will come, and she'll do a Bible lesson, and then sing some songs, and have some crafts, and then some games, some snack food and stuff like that. So have a good time, and of course invite them to our Sunday school program. And then we'll also have a church clean day once a year. They get together and the whole church comes and cleans the church. They take this, we have a church cleaning every week. We have on a rotation basis. Somebody comes and cleans the church during their turn. But this is a deep cleaning every year. They take off the screens and wash them, and they take the light fixtures down, and they do a thorough job of cleaning. And then, of course, after we get done cleaning, we have a barbecue. We are a Baptist church. They love to have a barbecue and sit around in our backyard. This is our backyard of the church. We have a big basketball court and an area for picnics and things like that. So we've been blessed in that way. So they love to sit around and have fellowship and food. We also have special meetings, Easter, Christmas, things like that. And most Japanese won't come to church. You invite them to church, they're almost guaranteed they won't come. But they'll come to a Christmas meeting or a special meeting they'll come to. So we have as many special meetings as we can. Christmas is the largest one that we have that people will be willing to come to. And in Japan, they have, after the meeting, we have a fellowship, and they have Christmas cake in Japan. They think that's an American tradition. I think, no, we don't have that in America, but they have to have their Christmas cake. So we provide a Christmas cake, and everybody has a good time, and we are able to reach, at least open the door to reach people with the gospel there. And then, of course, they hear the gospel message of the birth of Christ. We also involved in camp ministries. My brother's church has a campgrounds up in the mountains, and we every year go up and have a children's camp 1 week. And we have about 100 children usually that come, and from Monday to Friday. Not all of them stay the whole time, and so there's usually about 60 or 70 at one time, and some go and some come, but 100 total. And we have some games and some fun time of crafts and things like that. But also, in the morning we have one session, in the evening we have a session of a Bible lesson. And when they first come, we divide them into 2 teams, the whole camp into 2 teams, and so there's competition all through the week. And they will study their Bible, memorize their memory verses, so they can, their team can win. And we try to, sort of try to keep it even, because you don't want somebody to run away before the end of the week, so you want to try to get the last, But they really study their Bible, memorize their verses and everything. And so we're indoctrinating them without them even knowing it. As a result, usually about 25 children raise their hands that they've trusted the Lord as their Savior. And of course, not all those are probably true professions, but hopefully some of them are, and some of them do continue. And we've had people come back every year for, it's through elementary school. But And then we have missionary kid camp the next week, usually it's the next week, to encourage the missionary kids. You know, I was a missionary kid, my brother's a missionary kid, and we grew up in Japan learning the language, and we speak Japanese better than my parents could ever hope to learn it because we grew up there. And all these missionary kids, they speak it better than their parents will ever be able to speak it. And so it's it would be an advantage for them to be able to come back, and if they could catch the bird. And of course, we want to encourage them to do whatever God wants them to do. But we have a good time of rice ball decoration contests and things like that too, and they enjoy it also. But we do some funerals in Japan. Unfortunately, lately we've done a few. In Japan, like I said before, cremation is the law. And so that's a casket. It's a little, like a pine box covered with a sheet. And there's a little window in it. You can go and say your last time, and then they take that casket to the crematorium, and then they'll, in a couple hours, the family will go and pick up some ashes and put them in an urn and take it home. I also have a baptistry. A lot of churches don't have a baptistry, but the missionary that designed the church put a baptistry in, so we use that once in a while. And we also have mission teams come over. We had a mission team from New York, the last one that came over a couple years ago, and they were a great help to us. We also have a music ministry. We translate a lot of songs that aren't in Japanese, a lot of Majesty music songs and things like that, and we sing those. And the ladies love to sing. They have a ladies group that sings 3 or 4 times a year. It's usually a few more people than this, but we won't. But we also have ladies' tea. My wife does a ladies' tea once every year or two, at least. She tries to do a ladies' tea. The ladies of the church love to invite their friends, and Japanese love to get dressed up and do formal things. They do that for fun. And so my wife will have a ladies' tea, and the church people invite their friends, and people from the community will come. She tries to limit it to 30 ladies. She only sets 30 places, so she can't really fit many more than that in there. By the way, this lady in the blue here is my therapist. When I had hip replacement surgery about 5 years ago, she was my therapist, and her father, for business, was in a country that spoke English, so she knew a little English, but she wanted to continue English studies. So Becca, that's sitting next to her, we introduced her to Becca, and Becca has been teaching her English Bible for the last 5 years. She's not saved yet, but we are praying that the Lord would save her. And Becca, in every one of her prayers, she says, please pray for Lisa. Her name's Lisa, so pray for Lisa. All right, and that's Rena sitting beside her. She's from India, and she's one of our faithful members also. We have a friend party. A couple times a year we do a friend party, and it's a party to invite your friends to. We don't preach the gospel, we don't give out tracts, we don't do anything. We just want to get to know people. And so it's a non-threatening. We have a snack, usually around a theme. This is a Christmas time one, I think, and we have some cookies and some drinks, and we sit around playing games and talking and doing some crafts or whatever, just informal, getting to know people. And so we've had a lot of people come that way, and we get to know them and hopefully get an opportunity to befriend them and start a relationship with them and invite them back to church. And we're also involved in a literature ministry. We translate or write tracts and literature. This is a Christmas tract I wrote several years ago, and a man in our church did the layout on it, and we had it printed, and we shared that with a bunch of churches. And they find out somehow that we have it, and they start ordering it, and we don't charge for it, just give it away. But so they have a lot of churches have used this tract that I wrote, and there's other tracts. This is a bridge tract. This is online. If you're ever interested, you can go to my website. There's a link on there, and I wrote it in Japanese and English, and then our missionary to Bangladesh saw it and said, I want to translate into the Bengali and use that. And so I said, oh, fine, you do it. And so he printed it, and he sent me a copy of it. It's in Bangladesh. And then a missionary friend in China said, I want to use that in China. So I said, fine. So he translated it in Chinese. So it's online in Chinese, English, Bengali, and Japanese. So if you want to look that up. These are just the children's meeting announcements that we make that pass out. And some of the kids bring these. I think that's their admission ticket or something, but it's just our invitations. We also remodel the church. We do some projects. The building was built when I was 10 years old. I watched them build it. And so it's kind of an old building. This was the toilets. And one day, some of our members came and said, we're embarrassed to invite people because they got to use this, old Japanese squatty potty. So we had a contract company came and busted it out and put a new one in there. So it's a very, very small room. So the only one that would fit in was a corner toilet. So somehow I didn't even know they made those. But so you can barely get the door closed, but it works. We changed the light fixtures one year, put in LED lights. It was a good change. and then we tore out the carpet, old carpet, and put down new carpet squares. So we try to keep the church up to date a little bit. When we get back, we want to plant a new church. The Nagoya city is divided up into 16 what they call wards. I don't know in English, a township or something like that. It's smaller than a city, but it's divided up into 16 of those. Right now we're in the Tempaku ward, and the Midori ward is just south of Tempaku. And the Midori ward is the fastest growing ward in Nagoya. Nagoya, our ward, used to be bigger than Midori ward. Now the Midori ward is the largest. It's got a 10% annual growth rate right now. 10%. It's huge. It's just blowing up. And so we want to start a new ministry there and plant that church and hopefully get it going as a sister church from our present ministry. So pray for Japan and pray for the ministry there, and pray for us if you would. All right. Any questions? A quick question or two? Oh, I covered it all. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I know from previous prayer letters you had said something about men leadership this week there.
Yes. Yeah, the male leadership, she said, is weak. Yes, that's our number one prayer request. Every prayer letter for the last probably 5 years. Number one is they pray for a man, because we're missionaries. We go to our church, turn it over. We don't have anybody to turn it over to. I've been there for 3 terms already, and I didn't even plan to stay that long at that church. I want to plant another church, but there's nobody to take it over. And so pray for that, and male leadership. That's not only us, all churches. 80% of the people in churches are ladies and children. And so pray for men to get saved. And even the men that are there aren't really spiritual leaders. It's very difficult to be a spiritual leader in Japan with the culture the way it is. The families, I don't know what you think about Japanese families, but the father usually goes to work in the morning and comes home late at night. He doesn't have anything to do with raising his children. That's the wife's responsibility. And so she takes care of the home and all the children and things like that usually. And so the men are very uninvolved in their families. The wife does everything, and so even the Christians don't have a lot of leadership potential, some of them. And so pray that the Lord would get a hold of the hearts of those that are there, that they would take their responsibility in leadership. We have a church that's near us, not too far from us, a good church, a Baptist church, and they have a pastor. Their pastor retired about 10 years ago because he had heart trouble. And he was about to die, but he can't find any pastor. Pastor come, and then he finally found one person, and he left, and then he finally found another person. So I don't know. It's very difficult. Even the established churches are finding difficulty, and so pray for that male leadership in Japan. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is it easier or harder to reach people after disaster?
It's no easier. A lot of the missionaries during the tsunami and the earthquake back in 2000, when was it? We call it, ours is 9/11, theirs is 3/11, but I can't remember what year it was, but a few years ago they had the tsunami. And we thought, many missionaries just spent boxes and boxes of supplies and tracts and food and everything of it. I don't know of anybody that got, there's no churches started, they're very hard. The Japanese, when that disaster strikes like that, most Americans open their heart and their wallet and everything. Japanese think, well, they must have done something wrong to deserve this bad luck that they got. That's mostly their mentality, and so they didn't turn to the Lord or anything like that. Unfortunately, we wish it would, but it doesn't open their eyes anymore. I don't know why. Like I said, I wish it would. And you're seeing, there's about 20 or 30,000 people died in that tsunami. And there was bodies laid out everywhere. There was bodies floating everywhere. And people saw that, but they still it didn't spur them to think about eternity. I'm sure a few of them did, but not en masse at all. So I don't know what it's going to take. It's one of the lowest. It's a first world country. Among all the first world countries, it's one of the lowest Christian populations with a non-persecuted Christian influence. We can preach, we can speak, we can present our literature. We have no restrictions from the government or anybody else. We can do almost anything we want to, and we do. We pass out tracts. My dad's probably passed out 500 tracts a week for the last 20, 30 years. Now, how many tracts? Millions and millions and millions of tracts, and he's gotten very, 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 very few responses from them. So pray for Japan. It needs something. I don't know what, but it needs something to open their eyes. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
What's just the general attitude towards Westerners and Americans in general? I was there 30-some years ago, and we
Oh no, most Japanese like Americans. They like Americans. And you say Westerners, they don't like all Westerners, but they do like Americans. And they don't, they like Westerners more than they do Easterners. Koreans don't typically like Japanese, and Japanese don't typically like Koreans. The culture war, Japan, when in the war, they dominated. They took over China and Korea and everywhere else, and they're very, honestly, they're very brutal, and so some of the older people remember that. Most of the younger people don't care, but so yeah, they respect. We, as missionaries especially, we have a place of honor. They call us sensei, which is teacher or master or whatever. They call doctors and lawyers and everything sensei, and teachers sensei, and we're called sensei automatically, and they bow and respect us like a sensei they would. And so they have respect for Americans, but it's superficial. It's not something that they'll listen to you if you're presenting a message. They'll smile and listen to you, but it won't penetrate their heart. It's very difficult. There are many reasons, and I state a lot of reasons why it's difficult to evangelize. But they don't have a culture, a Christian heritage or culture or understanding at all. And so when you witness to somebody, you really have to start at creation. For example, the word sin in Japanese is the same word for crime. So if I ask you, "Are you a sinner?" I'm saying, "Are you a criminal?" They go, "No, I didn't rob a bank or kill anybody." And so we have to say, well, a crime is when you disobey man's law, and a sin is when you disobey God's law. And then you have to back up and say, well, God created you, and so you're responsible to obey God, and He deserves your obedience. And so when you don't obey Him, you're just like you're committing a crime. You're in a deficit, and so and there's a punishment attached to that, and Jesus Christ. But they don't understand anything else. They have to back up, and it takes usually years for them to understand the gospel.
So even though they have all the roadside idols.
No, they're like I said, it's cultural. Their idolatry is cultural. It's not. They don't believe. I mean, I don't know any Japanese. I've never talked to a Japanese that could defend his religion. Well, I said, why do you do that? The priest tells us to do that. I mean, that's tradition. That's what we do. That's what my parents do. There's no understanding. They don't have church they go to the temple every, on New Year's and certain holidays and things. That's all. They don't ever go otherwise. When there's a funeral, they call the Buddhist priest. They never call him otherwise. When there's a wedding, they go to the Shinto shrine, and that's probably the only time they'll ever go. So they're very religious in practice, but not in understanding. And so the bad thing is they think that's the way you are. Oh, I'm Buddhist, you're Christian. Hey, let's just have fun, And they think you believe what you believe, like they believe what they believe. So it's like no big deal. Hey, you want to be a Christian? That's fine, Until you say this is what we believe. Okay, fine, whatever. Let's just have fun. It's not a matter of seriousness to them. They won't, debate it with you because they don't know what they believe and they don't care that you believe differently. So that's another reason it's difficult to evangelize. Yes.
You mentioned that the men go to work early, come home really late. Mm-hmm. Do they have a weekend? Is there a time when you can witness to men or work with men?
Well, Sunday is their traditional day off. Of course, most businesses are open on Sunday because that's when everybody else is off. So most businesses are open on Sunday, and Wednesday is their day off. So more companies are closed on Wednesday than there are any other day of the week. So Sunday is usually the only day off that men have. They work on Saturday. They used to go to school on Saturday. It used to be, when I was a kid, they went to school on Saturday, and then they made a half day on Saturday, and then it was in the last maybe 20 years ago. We were in Japan when they changed the law and made it no Saturday school. And when they did that, the parents say, no! Because, there goes my free babysitting, So the parents didn't like it, but kids did. Yes, sir.
Are there other missionaries that you associate with that may not be like with the Baptist Church? Like I personally have a friend who's a Lutheran missionary over there right now.
In our area, there's a lot of churches, but there's no good ones that we can fellowship with. It's missionaries. There's two other churches. There's in our city. There's our church and two other churches that I would say are good Baptist churches. Otherwise, there's a lot of churches, but they're Pentecostal or charismatic or some kind of wacky, something. There's nobody that teaches the truth that I could fellowship with. There's some that are evangelical. They preach the gospel, but that's about all. They're not very influential, and they don't hold people to strict standards of Scripture. And for example, one of the big issues in Japanese churches, and most Japanese churches will acquiesce to idolatry as culture. They say, well, you don't want to offend people, so go ahead and bow to idols, and just be like everybody else. It's a social thing. It's not really a religious thing. And that's a lie, And when you do that, you're a horrible testimony to this person right here who's going to hell, And you're saying, oh, I'll just bow, it's no big deal. It is. And so those are the kind of churches that are, and the pastors might be saved, but they're not very strong in their standards and their living. So, anybody else, real quick? Let me see what time. Okay. Yes, sir.
What religions dominate in the country right now?
There's two religions, Shintoism and Buddhism. Those are the only two religions in Japan that are any significance. Probably Christianity is number 3, but like I said, it's 2%. So you got, but it's funny because if you ask, they took a survey, and 70% of Japanese claim to be Buddhists, and then like 90% claim to be Shintoists. Of the same people, okay? So they're like, okay. So they see there's two separate religions. Shintoism believes the emperor's God, and they worship their ancestors. Buddhism teaches totally different, and they are both. They see no contradiction because they don't really know what either of them believe. They're practicing, but they don't really understand it. So they claim to be. Most people, though, if you ask them, they'll say, I'm non-religious. I have no personal religious affiliation, but they go to the temple when everybody goes, because everybody goes. And it's a cultural thing, so... Did I see another hand? Anybody else? Anybody at all? Okay. I don't have time to do my
Yeah, that's fine. I really
challenge.
know your ministry.
Okay.
One of the questions
Yes.
is for us, are there any things that our church can do just as an encouragement? I know we pray for you, but are there other things that our church can do to help or be involved in the ministry over there?
Well, we have a couple of special projects that we work on. Like we're planning on starting another church. I'll probably be sending a prayer out stating that, and extra funds needed for that. And then we have a literature fund, and then we have the church is going to have a building fund. So I don't know what, but there's nothing. There's nothing that you can send us that we need over there. They have Costco in Japan now. It's not like it was when I grew up in Japan. When I grew up in Japan, we used to get these milk carton packages, people with stuff in it. And now it costs you more. You can hardly buy something that's more valuable than the postage cost to send it over there. It's like, I sent some to our coworkers over there, the kids, some stickers and whatever. It's $20 for an envelope to send over, so... they can buy stickers a lot cheaper over there, but it was, a sentimental thing. But so really, there's nothing that we need as far as that you could send over here. Your prayers are number one, and then the monetary support. We are about 90% of our support level, so we do need to raise a little bit more support. I don't like talking about money. I don't like to ask for money, anything like that. But monetary, and if a mission team, and send your pastor over, that'd be great encouragement to us. We love to have pastors over, and he could come over and be an encouragement to the church also. They love to see him, and we don't get a lot of them over there, so it is very expensive. We have people that say, well, can we come over as a mission team? I said, you can come over, and we'll put you to work and be helped, but there is absolutely, totally, completely no way you can do, this last mission team that came over, I think they paid $4,000 per person to come over, okay? They didn't do $4,000 worth of, it was an encouragement to them, and it was an encouragement to our people to see, but it sure wasn't worth $40,000 to come over, So I don't know what to say. There's nothing you can do as far as what would be extremely helpful in that way. If you want to come over, we'd be glad to have you, and we'll put you to work and stuff, but it's really up to it's the burden of the church. There's nothing I can tell you right now that we have a specific need. When we do start this new church, we'll have a building fund need and stuff like that. So. All right, I'll be back in the back. I have a table set up there, and there's a few prayer cards, so please come by and ask me any other questions and pick up a prayer card, and please pray for us. I appreciate it.
And you didn't tell me you were going to get a new prayer card, but...
Yeah. I have a new prayer card. It's probably at my house right now, but when I ordered it, I clicked the button to order it, and then I didn't hear from them for a couple of weeks, and I looked, and it's still sitting there saying you have to do something to the photo. It's like, why didn't you tell me? So I ordered it again, but it didn't get here in time. So sorry, I got the old prayer card that you already have. Sorry.
All right, good. So Senior Saints trip to Texas to see Lois, and then we'll go directly to Japan. Start saving up. Yeah. All right, we're going to pass out a prayer sheet, and then we've done this before, but we'll just read it and have closing prayer here. But I do always encourage you, put that someplace where you'll have for your own prayer time throughout the week, and make sure you do pray for each other here in the church and pray for our missionaries so that we're faithful to them. Mike?
When can I start sending my kids to school on Saturday?
Yeah.